everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Nonprofit Podcast, where we are using this platform to create a mastermind platform for executive directors, CEO, leaders, and future leaders of nonprofit organizations to essentially learn the best practices out there, the challenges that other nonprofit leaders are facing, and pick up some tips to implement directly into their organizations. Today, I have a special guest here with me. Her name is Nicole Thibeault, and she served on as the National Executive Director, also known as the Network CEO of Canadian Parents for French for the last 10 years. And you just recently decided to retire. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, Nicole, like you've been with the organization for so long, and you've been in the industry for a while as well. And during your time with the Canadian Parents for French, you've managed to double your revenue. How did you do that altogether? I mean, that is also the top of my priority all day, every day.
I think it's getting to know the sources of potential revenue, right? And then looking at, what have we been doing? What could we do better? Can we go in? And is there any sort of low hanging fruit? Is there any little bits that we can go? So we did it in a variety of ways by really looking at diversifying our funding and our revenues coming in. So it happens that Canadian Parents for French is a charity. So how are we doing on donations, for example? And so we implemented a couple of different campaigns, and we started to see some, traction once, every year getting a little bit better. So that helped. The second is, of course, we do a lot of projects. So looking at government funding for projects and knowing where do we best fit, what our mandate really is and where we can go. So we were able to sort of hone in on some key projects, which really helped us increase our funding by a lot. We also looked at the value of our programming. So historically, we may have given things away for free. We really re-looked at things and said, if people are going to value what we're offering, them paying, a modicum price, they'll actually show up. So for example, we have some online programming, tutoring, those kinds of things. So instead of offering it free, it may be $25. But that helps to add to the pot as it keeps going. Yeah. And we're able to reinvest that money into expanding the programs and improving them. So it really was a bit of a diversify your funding plan, and each piece looking at it and just always, looking at doing it 1%, 10% better than we were doing before. And you just start to chip away a little bit at that and then look at key places where you think you can make, we're the right organization to deliver that. And if you do a good story and your application, you get the grant or you get the agreement. And then you're able, once you get in with some funders, then you're able to have more access through different projects. So it's a bit of a different play out, but you have to have a bit of a strategy to it. And it doesn't happen overnight, but you do have to just keep at it and one step at a time. I think it makes a difference when you have that opportunity to kind of reflect on the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate that. Right now, I'm working with an organization who's struggling with the long-term sustainability. I mean, we are working with multiple organizations that are having that challenge at the moment. I guess my question to you is, it is fantastic what you share, like doing that 10%, 1% at a time. But ultimately, Nicole, you're only by yourself. Like you can only do so much. I'm sure you rely on your team for a lot of the stuff that they're put together. How do you rally up your troops to actually go into this direction and make them understand? And how do you track all these, for lack of a better term, let's say KPI, or like, hey, these are my strategic priorities, and do you have a system to track it? And how do you manage all these initiatives?
I think, again, that's what you said, it depends on your team, right? And so, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I had a team of about 5 to 7 staff that I worked with. And then we're a national organization. So then you've got these folks who are working in each of the provinces. So one, it's a coordinated effort. So that I would say, if I happen to have been a federated model, so they don't have to work with the national office if they don't like you, but if they like you and they see that what your initiatives are and they're going to benefit from it, they're going to work in a coordinated way. So I think it comes down to organizational culture. A little bit of that. It's really at the base of it. It's what are we all working towards in the same direction? How do we get people on board? Not every organization is going to have that model and all those extra bodies, but I'll just give a couple of examples. Historically, if it was fundraising, it had to be done from the national office, and it was, sort of top down. And what we realized is that we had people in the branches in certain provinces who had far more experience about fundraising than we did. So we created more of a committee style so that they felt empowered. And it gets into a little bit of our conversation on succession planning and leadership transition. There may be a great staff person who's really good about fundraising, and we gave them that opportunity to share that information with all the other provinces. They've never been recognized on that level. So, of course, they get to be much more motivated. And so that's one way of kind of getting a little bit of, getting people on board is what you were asking. The second one I would say is getting your volunteers, your board of directors on board, and they need to be role models. So, again, when it comes to fundraising, I often say, it's not about the amount you give, but it's very important that 100% of your board gives. Nobody needs to know that it might be $25 that you gave, because that's maybe all they can afford and that's what their capacity is. But they have committed to being a donor. And so they're able to say, we have 100% of our volunteer board of directors, chapters, etc., are giving. Then it's much easier to put a campaign together that says, why don't you join us and also give? So it's a little bit about organizational culture. I called it developing a culture of philanthropy. So even if you've got a junior student, on staff for the summer, and you say, we need you to be a donor, you can't be expecting big money from this individual, but they gave their $10. Then they're going to talk about it to their parents and their friends and their whatever, and they're going to encourage others to give because they gave. So I think it's that developing that culture where the organization wants to rally and it's coordinated. So that would be, I think, sort of my first. You can't do it all by yourself. That's for sure. Identifying people who have some expertise, who are out there, who are willing to help you. And people who are willing to be a bit like your champions, your role models, and then using them. So they could be volunteers, they could be staff, but getting them to kind of talk to their circles and see if you can rally a few. And the other thing I'd say is let's set realistic expectations, because I know sometimes it's a survival piece, but you can't go from zero to $100,000 tomorrow. And I think, so, what is our goal? So, if your goal is $5,000 for the first year, how could we do it? It could be 100 people giving X number of dollars. It could be 1,000 people giving only a little bit less. Or do you have one or two bigger donors? So it is a time of you have to reflect and you have to be realistic. Maybe we get 2 big donors, 3 big donors. Maybe we get, 100 people who give this model amount. Then we have a little bits of extras. And then we start to look at the number of engagement. And then that helps build it for year 2. So again, that's what I kind of say, is that you can't go from, 0 to 100%. But if you just build that kind of this is realistic, this is how we're going to support, and you celebrate the little successes.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that comment so much. I that whole spill of how you actually build that up from the ground up. I think sometimes people dismiss that everyone start from zero. If you start and you get $5, that's a win. That's not infinite return, but let's say it is still a huge win. Next year you can build on that momentum. What people would think generally is that, hey, it's only $5, it's not going to make a difference. But it's getting the $5, getting into the habit of earning that $5. And the next thing is that everyone gives you $5, and it makes a difference over time.
And don't forget, what are you going to do with that person who gave you that $5? You're going to thank them.
Yeah.
And you're going to say to them, I really hope you're going to give me $5 next year. And when you say thank you for the $5 and you're saying, I'm not sure, but would you be willing to give us $10? Because then I could give you a tax receipt. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like that little upsell, but you value what they gave you. Then you ask them for the little, and you make them an annual donor or a monthly donor. We literally at Canadian Parents, we've been around for like, I don't know, almost 50 years. But we have people who are monthly donors, and literally the amount they give is $5 a month. It doesn't seem like an awful lot, but that says something over, you believe in an organization if you give money over a long period of time, and they're willing to then say, put my name as a donor, this is why I give. And then when you do your campaign, someone says, well, so-and-so, I know her, she's in our neighborhood, and she's been a long time donor to this group, I guess I could do the same. So in our case, it's a lot about opportunities for their kids, so their parents. And they may not have a lot of money to give at this time because the money's going into taking care of their kids and they're young. But if they can say, I'm giving $5 a month or $10 a month, and I believe in the opportunities that are helping my kids, that's going to sway another parent for sure. So I think it's going small steps, taking a personalized interest in the people who are giving and why, and then using that in your campaign.
I love that. I can literally think of an executive director that I'm going to recommend this conversation to start small and then have realistic expectation and then improve over time and do some upsell as well. And get recurring revenue. Like these are all like golden nuggets that I think a lot of us can be. A lot of the nonprofit leaders that are struggling with financial sustainability could use all these tips. So
and then don't forget, whoever you do have on staff or whoever you have on your board, you give them the task of identifying one person to give. Right? So that's who's your circle of influence. So I can influence my husband to give, or I can get my daughter to give, or I can give my next door neighbor to give. But if you feel like I'm just getting one person, that's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, making the task so small that it's so easy to get. Like even if it is $10 donation, it is still one influence another and then another and other. Yeah, 100%. That's so smart. And I guess that is really smart, but I think you have some other wisdom out there to have, let's say, the guts to actually have this conversation, because you're not going to walk into a board meeting and say, hey, everyone in this meeting, tomorrow you're going to go out and ask your next door. So it's something that maybe some of the newer executive directors would not have the courage necessarily to say, no, everyone needs to donate. First of all, and then everyone also need to find someone else to donate.
Yeah. So how do you bridge that conversation if that's not part of the culture, right?
Yeah.
So my suggestion, this is my approach. I don't know if it's the right approach.
No worries. Yes.
Every board meeting, we would have a pre-reading.
Yeah.
So what I would do is say, the February board meeting, we're going to talk a little bit about revenue diversification. And so I'm suggesting this reading that you can do ahead of time, and we'll have a conversation about it when we get to the board meeting. So what it would do is it's their homework. So that then the board is engaged and they're doing their homework. Yes. And then it opens up and just let the conversation be. What did you get out of the reading, Cherry? What did you get out of it? And everybody goes around the table. But of course, at the end of it all, as the executive director, you get to say, okay, here's what I'm hoping you saw. They mention a best practice is that everyone on the board can give.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that? Does that make it awkward for you? You were, recruited to be giving money. We asked you because we wanted your wisdom, but could you recruit? What's the capacity? What could we suggest? And then you have that conversation, so you take the awkwardness away from it. So you just create those things, and then at the end of the board meeting, you have your minutes that say our goal is for this. Here's a couple of actions that we're going to take. We're going to discuss this with my neighbor. I'm going to talk to one person. So everybody gets a small task to do. But I think you don't want to be the person bringing it up. As you said, it's awkward as the ED. But if you have set themes for each board meeting, and you have, let's say, 3 or 4 board meetings a year, you have to talk about certain things. One of them becomes funding, fundraising. It could be revenue diversification, whatever term you want to use. Then there's some readings that you do. And then the readings help them learn about it. And then they feel like they're more informed on the conversation and the why are we going to move forward in this direction. It helps them be the champions of it. And then they can be the leaders. So you don't have to be the one pushing that. They'll go push it for you.
That's amazing. I think that is a fantastic way to ask them to fundraise. Now, that's the board. Now, what about your employees and also the volunteers? How do you start having those conversations and create that culture? I think maybe just to give some context, I think it's not in everyone's, sometimes it's hard to, I guess, change culture, for lack of a better term. Sometimes when you work for a nonprofit, you're thinking, hey, it's almost like a little bit like government culture. Like it's slower pace. I don't have to work as hard, and I don't have to worry about revenue generation because government is going to fund my whole organization. So the mentality is slightly different. So how do you rally up the troops that you have to actually create that culture?
Again, I guess it comes back to me. Again, you have to communicate, but you have to educate, right?
Yeah.
So as I would do with the board meeting is an example of where I would do a pre-reading and then a discussion. I would do with staff the same way. I would do an education session. I wouldn't make it mandatory in any way. I would just say blanket invitation to all staff. So in my case, we had national and then we had all the provinces. Didn't matter what your job description was. Are you interested in more about fundraising or whatever topic? And I would bring an expert in. And they would give us a 30-minute information piece, and then we'd have some handouts. And it's just in general. So there's no pressure there. I'm just learning about it. What we would find is we did it on all kinds of topics, like cybersecurity, conflict, a conflict of interest. What does that mean? It could be about an HR topic. It could be about an operations topic. Fundraising, we've done it on advocacy. We did it on, best programming, whatever topics might be, but vary them. Keep it short, and it becomes like a lunch and learn for the staff. They leave with a few pieces, but what it does is they get informed, and then they start having a better sort of sense of the culture of philanthropy and its importance for your organization. And then I would say we would start maybe early on, we'd have 5-6 people join. By the time I was done, we'd have 29, 35 people joining.
Oh, wow.
And it had nothing to do with their job. It was just out of interest. It was free. It was something they could do over lunch. And then we gave them, they put that on when their performance review profile. What are the sessions that you've attended? So it shows that you're always trying to learn and inform yourself, be educated. And they got kind of credit for their professional development that they were doing. But often,
God, that's awesome.
The person who doesn't have anything to do with fundraising says, well, in communications, all we need to do is do a couple of really good social media posts. And I'd be like, wouldn't that be great if you would take the time to do that? And the person takes that on, and that's the leadership. They created a couple of interesting posts, and then they shared it across to everybody. We were able to, and then you start to see a shift. As you said, the shift takes time. You can't push it too fast, but you always have to be offering them something to learn. You have to give them the opportunity to grow and to shift. So you kind of manage that.
That is so cool. I really like the idea of doing the maybe monthly lunch and learn type of planning event, so then the team members can continue to learn, and that is how you groom that culture altogether. So smart. I'm learning things that I can actually apply to not just nonprofit, but also to my own business. I think we should start. I started with something like that, but never really carry it on. I think I need to revisit that that thing, like once a month we have a lunch and learn. I think that would be awesome.
And I mentioned about getting like an expert in, because sometimes, like, I have to tell you, like, cybersecurity was a conversation, and I mean, none of us knew much about it, so we brought an expert in. But don't forget to ask your staff, is there anybody who wants to lead a lunch and learn?
Yeah.
Because they'll have areas of expertise that they want to share with other staff members. So you're recognizing their knowledge and what they're bringing. And I think that's a really important opportunity for them, for their growth.
Absolutely. Wow, like you just shared so many golden nuggets and I really appreciate it. And we haven't even gone to the section that I intentionally invite you on. Now let's move on to that. So you just recently retired. The way that you retire from Canadian parents for French is a multi-steps and multiple years planning involved. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So for people to know, I was there for 10 years. When I first took the role on, my thinking was that it was going to be about 3 to 5 years. So when I signed my contract, I signed a contract for 3 years. Right? So already in my mind, I wasn't staying for a super long time. But what I noted was there was some work to do, and we developed a strategic plan. And I think, if I can say this to most executive directors and to boards, the strategic plan kind of guides who your leader is. So based on what the strategic plan was that we were there, and it was a 5-year strategic plan, I was the right person to lead that strategic plan. And so when the 3 years, there's like, absolutely, I'll just renew for another 2 years, because I think we're moving forward. It's a good thing. So I do think that helps people put that in their mind a little bit about, like, how long am I here for, and why am I the right leader for the organization? As time went on, what ended up happening, of course, we had the pandemic. And so that's a moment of kind of crisis for the organization. It was not the right time for me to be leaving. And so that then extended my time. So I ended up staying on. What I knew, though, was that we were now into our second strategic plan. It would be coming to an end. And I knew this was the right time to kind of pass the baton to somebody else, so that new ideas, things that I needed to create in the organizational culture, were starting to be quite embedded. There'd been a different way of working and shifting the communications. So this was a great time for the organization to have somebody young and with energy and that kind of stuff take it over. So I started 2 years ahead of leaving. And I do know that when people say, "Ooh, you're already out the door," it wasn't so much in that I was out the door. It was that I knew there would be a lot of things to set in place so that the transition would be smooth. I did not tell everybody I'm leaving in 2 years. What I did do is I started putting a few bugs in people's ears to say, "Hey, I won't be here forever. Have you ever thought of being the next CEO? Have you ever thought of being executive director?" I said that to staff. I said that to some of our volunteers. I said that when I'd be out in sessions like the OAX or ONE. And like, by the way, you're an executive director. Have you ever thought of shifting over to our work? That kind of thing. So I think you put the thoughts out there, and in your mind, you start doing a bit of a process. So when people ask me how long did it take, it was a 2 years with some key people. So the people on the board, so letting them know I'm not going to renew my contract again. That'll be the time. So you want to make sure you have the right president in the role, because they'll have a succession planning committee. They'll have to do the search. You want to make sure that they have a bit of an understanding of how they're going to do that. 18 months in is when we told everybody. And so the reason it was long is that I was a federated model. And so we had the national office and all the provinces. I really believe you want to build confidence. And so if word got out, "Oh, she's planning on leaving," some staff person would say, "Oh my goodness, who's going to come in? What's going to happen? My job's going to change. Am I going to lose my job?" So you don't want the rumor mill to start. Better for them to get information 18 months ahead, be very transparent, show you have a plan, build the confidence in the staff and the volunteers that we know where we're going with this. We have a plan. So I think that's very important for people. And then really it was sort of 6 months in, then it was okay, now let's start looking at, so we created the search committee. We knew who on the board was going to be involved, how it was going to propose, what the job description would look like. It gave me time to develop, let's say, a job description, but then send it to the board, and they could start to look at it now against the new strategic plan. We've done these things, but now where do we want to take the organization? So we'll create a new strategic plan with this new person. There's going to be a different kind of leader that we need. So let's make sure that's in the job description. So that gave them that time. And then there's the process then getting into, hiring a firm to help do the interview pieces, getting people. And I would say that you want to give enough time from the interviews and selecting the person before you're leaving, because that person is a leader in their own organization as well. They can't leave their job tomorrow.
Yeah,
absolutely. If they're professional, they're going to tell their organization, I'm taking this other job, but they want to give a good transition period to their organization as well, respectfully, right? So you need to give them a good 6 months time. And then when it came time we announced who was coming in, it was about 2-3 months before I was leaving. And then we knew the date, and then we had a little overlap period. And so I always say to people, think about the overlap. If the person knows the organization really well or has had lots of experience, you probably don't need as much of an overlap. Somebody's new to the field, doesn't know that, they may need a little bit longer. We ended up with about 3 weeks. It was 2 weeks sort of official, and then 1 week I was in the shadows. And so that person still knew I was available. And then even then, I didn't disappear. So the person felt even a month after they were in, there was a few key questions they could ask. And the other I would say is consider if you have a staff person who can be a support to the new person coming in. So in my case, our director of operations has been there for a really long time. She would be a great person. So they didn't need me as much. There was someone there. Whereas if you didn't have that staff person, then making sure you're available to answer questions as things come up. So a long process, I sort of say 2 years from start to finish. A bit of a formal succession plan that you know how you're going to do things. And I think that's an important piece for people. I always say to people, think about a lot of communication. And that's why I say 18 months ahead, we let everybody know, because I was worried that there would be rumors. And I didn't want anyone to think I was leaving. And who cares what happens? I do care what happens. And so we want to set it up for success and a really smooth transition. So good communications with volunteers, board, staff, making sure people can ask questions. What's going to happen next? I'd be able to say, well, the new person's going to come in and you're going to develop a new strategic plan. You're going to have an opportunity to give input as to where the organization goes in the future. Well, that starts to make them feel like, oh, I'm still part of that team and I'll still continue to have my job.
That's fantastic. I think having that foresight to go to the board, essentially the board is the employer, the boss that you have, right? It's very admirable. I don't have a lot of words in my vocabulary. I think it is very admirable, to say that, hey, I would not be available over the next little while. And then what I also learned is that not about you, but from the conversation that we have, is that you see change or employee turnover is a good thing. You've already build a great culture, and you need some fresh ideas coming in to take this and to the next level. And that angle is something that sometimes our nature, or at least our brain, is not wired to be prepared for it, and we're sometimes afraid of change.
The change management with humans is always a challenge, and it's a little bit when you said about the shift in culture. That's change management. how people how they see themselves and their level of importance in an organization. You have to value their contribution. Sometimes, jobs shift. And so maybe you were the project manager, but now we don't have that project anymore. So the person thinks, well, am I going to lose my job? Or have they got other skills that they can bring that now they're not the project manager? We're going to have a different title, but they still have a contribution to make. And so if you're having regular performance reviews with staff and giving them the opportunity to talk about what they feel their strengths are, but also what they want to do. And I always love the question. I say, this is what you're doing right now, but what do you want to be doing in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? One of them's going to say, I want to be the executive director someday, and so it's not tomorrow, but you say, that's great. So how do we help build their leadership? How do we help them understand what the role entails? Somebody's going to say, I've been a coordinator, I'd like to be a manager. Well, what does a manager role differ from being a coordinator? What are your expectations? So you're able to get to know what they can bring. So if job titles or job functions have to change, does that person still fit in the organization? Sometimes it doesn't. And you may also, again, have time to tell them, okay, I have a plan that this likely job is not going to be here. How do we help you now start looking for something else? So I think that's that honest piece that, a lot of leaders have to do is we have difficult conversations with staff and with volunteers. There's some longtime volunteers who've been with the organization, and then you have to go back and say to them, thank you so much, but I can't have you volunteering on that project anymore.
I know that is so hard because they're volunteering their time and they are no longer a good fit anymore for that purpose. How do you, especially we have some clients in our field of work that they have a volunteer bookkeeper that has done work for years in their desktop, and you now have to elevate that desktop access to online. And the bookkeeper took it very personally. Those difficult conversations is just hard.
It is very hard, but it's also about getting to know the holistic person. That bookkeeper is not just a bookkeeper.
Oh,
so
yes.
What else does that person have to offer? So rather than shifting them and saying, you're out, say, we're going to have to move these things, but maybe could we plan that you're going to meet with the new person who's taking over the next thing and share some of your understandings and your caring about this organization, so that helps. And then once that's done, can we get you to help on the fundraising committee? Would you be able to help us with, we have this event coming up. So would you be the treasurer of the event?
Oh, okay. I like that opportunity shift. It's not because we don't want you. We want you in a different aspect in that.
So you help them move along, and once they let go of those long-term, that they start to say, oh, I like doing other things as well. And you may also have opportunities where you meet a smaller organization who does just need a bookkeeper, and they could become the bookkeeper for another group.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're always looking for venues and helping them guide that the whole HR. And when I say, human resources, I mean both staff that are paid as well as volunteer management takes up so much time because we're talking about people's feelings.
Yeah.
And so it's about how do we respectfully shift people and how do we appreciate their contribution, but then say to them, we're moving to the next level. And so this is why we're doing this, but we're hoping you'll still be supportive of us by doing that. So it's those hard conversations, as you said, Sherry, but that's part of being the leader.
Wow. I learned so much from our conversation today. And we went straight to business, all about your leadership, your management, culture, change management, and the retirement plan, all these difficult conversations. I didn't even get to ask you, how's your retirement life right now?
It's good. It's the summer. So that's helpful. The first 3 months, I did still have a little bit of work to do. So I had a small contract with them, get the annual report done. So the new person didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But since July, I haven't been working. And so far, so good. I think I'm going to hopefully still stay involved with groups like ONE.
Yes.
I'd still love to be able to mentor or to help people. I care very much about the not-for-profit sector.
Yeah.
I think that we have some wonderful leaders out there. And I do truly remember those first years of, and you said it, you're working in your association, you work so many hours, and you're so alone.
Yeah.
And you think there's nobody else who understands what I'm going through. And so for me, I found the CSAE, which was the program. I did the Certified Association Executive Training.
Yeah.
That helped me just even meet other executive directors who had similar issues and challenges. And I thought, oh, it's not just me. Oh, good.
Yes.
And so I've been doing this for so long, like it's been over 20 years. You start to, okay, this is similar from this organization to that organization. And I do really think what you're doing through the podcast, also those one-day events where you get people together, that camaraderie with your colleagues, the collegiality is so important, so that you can reach out and ask for some support or ideas. And it may not be the same domain, but we all deal with people, and we all have, the difficult person or the over-keen volunteer, or we have the board directors who are not as engaged. So we can kind of share some strategies that way.
Amazing, Nicole. I really thank you for today, and also all your years of support for our events, and then your wisdom. I think it's very much needed in our field, in particular in the executive director world. I'm a small business owner myself. I'm a leader in my own world, but the leader in a small business world generally do not need to answer to a volunteer board, and the management is way less because I don't have to deal with the dynamic in the board recruitment and all the other stuff. You guys are doing things that I am currently doing for my organization, and on top of it, then there is probably 10 balls on top of you constantly, and the mix of the balls kept changing every few years. So something that I always admire nonprofit leaders have. So
it's such a key for the board to understand their governance role, so that the staff can do the operations role. And I think that too, I would suggest, is a organizational culture that you have to make sure there's some education, information, training, so that people understand how we work side by side together.
No, that is amazing. There is so much wisdom that you drop, and I really appreciate the time. I don't want to take more of your time from your retirement life, but I'm sure I'll see you again in the future events as well. So for anyone who wants to reach out to Nicole, I'm sure Nicole is on LinkedIn. So
I am.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you, Sherry. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Amazing. As we wrap up, I want to share a bit more about what we do at Altus Financial Solutions. For the past 18 years, Altus Financial Solutions has been dedicated to enhancing the financial management and strategic planning capabilities of hundreds of associations and nonprofits across Canada. Our extensive experience has enabled us to deliver tailored financial solutions that drive growth and enhance sustainability for nonprofits and associations. If you are interested in learning more about how Altus Financial Solutions can support your organization, I would love to offer you a no obligation 20-minute call. Let's discuss your unique challenges and explore how we would be able to help you achieve your goals.